Hey, sports fans. I wanted to come on here to tell you that I had another video I was going to release yesterday about Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell, but with what's going on in the NBA, I thought it'd be more important to have a discussion with a couple people about what's happening, what the goals are, what they're trying to do. So I sat down with three important people who really have a good sense of what's happening with the NBA and have a really good context of what they want, what their feelings are. I think it'll help. So enjoy this, and we'll be right back to our normal programming tomorrow with that Jamal and Donovan video. So here it is. Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. I am pleased to have friend of the breakdown, Devin Williams from In the Lab, with us. And Devin, thank you so much for coming on. And I thought it would be good to have a conversation today about what's going on in the NBA. We've had games that were canceled. The players boycotted a whole day's worth of games. What was your initial reaction to when you heard that the games yesterday were going to not get played?
My initial reaction was, dang, I wanted to see that Oklahoma versus Houston game because I just didn't know what happened. But honestly, because of what's going on, it made sense, and I was happy to see that it was going to get done. And a lot of people say, well, "What is this going to do? It's not going to do anything." But there's a lot of history and proof that this type of stuff does actually have a change. It causes change, and you even look back to like guys like Bill Russell, who sat out 59 years ago because of racial injustice, and it actually did move the needle a little bit. So there's a lot of proof that this actually helps, and I'm actually proud of the players. I wish they would have got a little bit more on the same page with things, being that there were reports that not all of them communicated that they were going to do this together, because that's what it's going to take for us to actually like cause some change or make change.
Did you happen to see the video footage from Wisconsin?
Didn't see the video. Uh, actually, I was actually looking for it and I couldn't find it. So yeah, I definitely want to see it.
Okay, so you haven't seen what happened with the police and the guy getting shot.
I just saw pictures, so
Okay.
I know what happened, but I wanted to see. Oh! I'm sorry. Yes, I have. I have. I'm thinking about the shooting that took place with the 17-year-old kid. But yes, I did.
Oh, what was your reaction to watching that?
My initial reaction, because I had just, so this is my initial reaction. I had just finished talking to kids, which I do a lot, just how to operate when you're out on the streets and maybe you get pulled over and you come into a racist type encounter. My initial reaction was like, dang, why is he walking away? Why is he walking? But that doesn't warrant getting shot 7 times in the backseat. My brother, I have family members that are cops, and so um, when you kind of know and you've dealt with, like, you not deal with. My brother's had a lot of talks with me just about how to operate when certain things happen, and I've respected that. And the objective every day is just to get home and be safe, and stick your head out of trouble and just be around the right people. And so he was, just kind of telling me how to move, and what I saw in that video was not how you're supposed to go about things. Now we don't know what exactly happened, obviously, and we don't. I don't think that there are police body cams from what I heard. Maybe I read wrong. Um, so there's no way to all the way speak on what's going on, but I know 7 shots in the back is not the mission here. It's not right. So seeing that, you can't help but be pissed off. And then after hearing that his kids were in the car, that kind of added to it, because you just imagine yourself. You have kids. Imagine your kids being traumatized by something like that. That sticks with them forever. Especially like if they're in the developmental stages, and you're developing on your whole life. So just it kind of eats at you a little bit, and it sucks. But the my initial response was that, but it was just like, come on, dude. Like this, my brother will tell you, like, there's plenty of ways to detain a person, and it doesn't. I mean, you could have went for detain. You could have did a lot of different things, but you didn't have to go for. It made me think like, yo, did this cop? did this dude not have a phone or like a TV to see what's going on in the world? Like, why would you, like now, why would you do that? You have to be thinking like that. And I understand, like, putting myself in a cop's position, what could be going through your head, but like that's what you're getting paid to do as
Hmm.
basketball fans, right? So, we want to see guys compete. When you're required to do a job, you're supposed to do it to the utmost of your ability, and you're required to protect, serve, and protect. And just to see how that they went about that, it wasn't the move, right? And so this is the result of it.
Yeah,
Um,
I dipped my toe on my political Twitter, kind of saying it, 7 shots were not justified, and that invited all the replies on the other side who were, I want to defend the cops. I suppose my answer was, I can. How many clips would you like to see of white people aggressively going at police officers and never getting anywhere near shot, much less beat up or anything like that? That seems to me the clear dichotomy we have here is that depending on your race, you can act a certain way to police officers and not have the fear of getting shot, and that seems to be, I think, the root of the issue, right?
right. And so like yeah, there's a lot of you can use video nowadays to fit any narrative. Uh, but at the end of the day, there is a problem at hand. It's not just Black lives, but Black lives are the problem at hand. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and this is just one that we need to address as fast as possible. But not only do we need to like address that, like I think it's a great time for people to start learning about the history and learning why this stuff is going on, and because that education is a true way to change, right? That's what I believe.
Hmm.
And so just being informed and updated, even as the players, like then you need to like really be sharp when you start, because people are going to start questioning you, and the curtain always gets pulled back. And if you know your stuff or you don't know your stuff, it will get revealed. And the same thing kind of happens in the basketball world. If we can go on Twitter and we can go on YouTube, you and I, and debate things to kingdom come, or like just kind of put, not even debate, just like put our videos out there. But at the end of the day, there are people who really know their stuff, and so when that curtain gets pulled back, do you really know what you're looking at, or is it just like you're kind of just going over what you see? And you know what I mean, like you have to really know. And so not to get too far into basketball, it's just like I'm valuing education now more than ever,
Hmm.
uh, and just these guys have a lot of money, so where are you gonna put it now? When you decide to support this or support that. But not to get too far off the topic, off the question that you asked, I'm just hoping that uh, obviously there needs to be a change in the way our system is, and it's just a tough job for cops too, because it's when you're out there, it's you or them, and not everybody is out there all hunky dory and just nice, in these streets. Like anybody who grew up or like in areas where I come from, it gets a little crazy out there, and so. I can only imagine going into work every day, especially like in the worst parts of LA or wherever, and you have to learn. You're always on high alert. So I'm not trying to excuse the cops' actions for any of the stuff that we've seen this year. You just know, I mean, especially not the knee on the neck. I mean, what are we talking about here? So, but I definitely, I get why people will go like, oh well, all lives matter. I get why people are going the whole route of, well, this he shouldn't have been walking, and like look, there's so much proof of the opposite end of that, right? But people have to like stop and put themselves in other people's shoes and just kind of see things for what they are, and like what's going on, it's not right. It's not right, and then on top of that too, we got to stop putting everybody like, or I use myself as an example first. Like people kind of like to put black people in like this certain group and just group you up. Like, oh, okay, you must rap, or you must do this, or wow, you really are speaking like well, you can talk, like you can speak in complete sentences, like yo, like you tell me it's a lot of different ways I can go, but like on the opposite end of that, I have a lot of like friends that are from different colors, like different colors, right? And we can't just keep talking about white people, white people, white people, because they're like, you can't just put every white person in the same bubble as you put everybody else. Saying that you're racist, this and that. Like, this is now the best time to educate your friends of color and just show like this is what happened. Like the conversations need to start being had a lot more often now, and that's we're not doing this right now. We're not fighting for us. We're fighting for the next generation now. As Martin Luther King was doing, Malcolm X, and they were fighting for what we're going through right now. Like for freedom in general. We wouldn't even be in this position if we didn't have people like Rosa Parks and this and that. And so like now, what we're doing and what NBA guys are doing, whether they know it or not, they're fighting for their kids, and it's very important. What's happening right now is very important for based on like what's going to happen for the next 30 years and 50 years. Who knows how things may change or may not change.
Right. I mean, do you think that there's an overall goal here? I mean, what would the goal be? Is there a tangible thing that can be done legislatively across the United States to sort of solve this issue?
I think a lot of things are centered around money. So you make people lose enough, they're going to want some change here, right? So um, if I'm those NBA guys in NBA, I would just stop. I wouldn't even play, and that sucks. Cause like I've been loving the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Like my goodness, I'm just like such good basketball. But um, if you really want to see change, I was on board with like Kyrie a long time. Like yo, just don't play.
Mm-hmm.
Mess like because that's a lot of money going down the drain, and those owners they don't like losing money. They're billionaires. They don't like losing money. They don't like having holes in their pockets. So once they see certain things, I believe that they're gonna what they believe or not, whether they're racist or not. Because there's proof that I mean, guys like Donald Sterling, there are racist owners. Might be some submarine ones right now, but like either way, they start losing enough money. Oh, they're gonna bring that cop into custody. We're gonna get some justice for Breonna Taylor. Because if we have the right people pushing for that, but the thing is, it'll just take a big cut out of players' money. Because there's only a certain amount guaranteed, and when certain things happen, that money that you guys thought that these NBA players are making 200 million over 5 years, that kind of gets chopped now because of what's going. If the players decide to, I'm not going to play. So shout out to the players for deciding to take a stand. There's no right or perfect or one way. I was talking to a friend. He said the same thing. There's no one way to stop all this. It's going to be a number of things, but they stop playing. It's going to make a big enough statement. Not everybody's going to like it, like but it's no coincidence. Like with Colin Kaepernick, all this stuff is coming to light. No coincidence. Like Kyrie was saying all that stuff. Like they called him the disruptor. Now we're protesting or boycotting, trying to boycott whatever. I don't even know what it is, but I want people to know like the difference between boycott and rescheduling. Like you got, I think they need to just take a stand and just not play because that's gonna really like set some things on fire. Because I'm just talking about ad spaces and just a lot of different things that are gonna be screwed up. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's going to require everybody to start making a change. Not just sounds too long winded. So
I hear it. No, it sounds like they're gonna start playing over the weekend again. So they were able to, I guess, make a point. It seems like it has shook the world a little bit, and people have listened. I mean, the thing you mentioned about Kaepernick, imagine that. Now he looks like a leader of a movement, whereas everyone can remember 5 years ago. A certain segment of his population vilified him and said that he was against the flag and he was against the anthem and against the country. So I think what to your point is, there has been some progression even in 5 years, where I think a vast majority of the country now understands now what Kaepernick was talking about back then.
I'm a filmmaker, so like I can tell you right now that in years to come, there's going to be movies about Kaepernick. There's going to be documentaries about him because of the level of hate that he received for trying to stand for what he believed in. And so the fact that, he said all that, is just so many different little from him holding that workout and, people showing up and him saying what he said. There's going to be so much that you could draw from just based on how the world has been over the last, I don't know how many years, but Kaepernick is going to be looked at sort of similar. I know people are going to hate to hear this, but sort of similar like Malcolm X. I don't see how it won't be possible that he could be looked at like that, especially if he continues to fight. And I did want to throw this out there. The next move we talked about, like, okay, actually just saying, you know what, I'm not playing. I think that while you're doing that, it's very, very important for guys to. And I like what Jaylen Brown said. Like, are you guys just gonna go home, or are you guys gonna go home and like actually keep on fighting? Like, what are we gonna do about it? Because a lot of y'all just want to, suck your thumbs and go home and be with your kids. But like, there are guys there that want to actually see change and are actually aware of what's going on. And so I think now more than ever, and I want to double down on this. It's very important for those players to be educated on what's about Ronnie in the Malcolm X book. There were a lot of page flips, and like, because you can tell when the page a book's been flipped through. We gotta. I think LeBron does a good job for the most part of just being aware and having a team that kind of fills him in on everything, and him doing his own homework, and But I think that there needs to be more players that follow suit in that, because when we get called out on things, we gotta know. We got to know our stuff. When politicians call us out and shut up and dribble and all this type of stuff, you got to be able to flip the page, like turn this or flip the script on them. Like, no, wait, hold on, I know what I'm talking about. Like, and we can go down a list of things that need to be changed, and here's why. And the debates, all the debates that need to be had. Like, one thing I love about the basketball culture is barbershop talk. We can go on and on and on and bring up this fact and bring up that fact, but can we do that with the real world? If we study up, we can. We're only able to do this with basketball because there's so much information out there about it that we're interested in. But it's time to get interested in like real life stuff that can affect your lives. And not only that, you can be looked at as a hero, not even trying to be looked at. You could become a hero just learning and just educating yourself and setting the next generation up for positivity. So it's just kind of the way I look at it.
Well, really great words. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing them. And, stay safe out there. And the thing was, stay safe used to mean, COVID, but it's a lot of other things now, unfortunately. But just stay safe out there. And thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
All good. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Hey, sports fans. Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. Today, I'm really happy to bring on a friend of the Breakdown, Jay Michael, who is a Pacers beat writer at the Indy Star. And I thought we would discuss a little bit about what your thoughts were on what had happened the last day or so with the NBA and having games canceled and negotiations of what they're going to do. So, Jay, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, good to be here. It's been a long time. This last 48 hours has been kind of crazy. I didn't think they would go through with boycotting or postponing or whatever you want to call it at this point. I wasn't sure once they got in there that they would make this move. I thought maybe when they got in, they're like pot committed to making this whole thing work. So I'm a bit surprised that not only of how quickly this all came together, but it's once the Milwaukee pulled out, then the dominoes had to fall because let's face it, if you don't have what many people consider the best team, or if not the best team, one of the two or three best teams in the league, in the tournament or in the playoffs, then it kind of delegitimizes the whole process anyway. So from a logical standpoint, it doesn't make sense for the other teams to play because it's just not going to mean the same thing. But I am shocked, though. I am shocked that they made that move. Now, I thought they might have made the move, some of these teams, to not go into the bubble. We saw a lot of players, Justin Holiday, for one of the guys I cover from Indiana, he really was considering not going down. And we've heard people like Kyrie Irving talk about this sort of thing for this very reason. But I thought once they got there, they would be less likely to do this. So I'm a little bit floored, somewhat impressed. I have all sorts of emotions kind of floating around at the same time about this.
And what did you make about, like the Lakers and Clippers? It sounds a bit informal, but they kind of voted like they would want to leave the bubble altogether and not have the rest of the playoffs. So what did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, is it a case of one-upsmanship? I don't know. I mean, I was shocked by that too, to totally leave. But I guess it makes sense though. Like I said, if Milwaukee's going to be out at this point, and you're looking at league partners, the networks now having to fill these voids, it's kind of thrown everything into flux. I mean, now even as we look ahead to next season, and next season's not going to be starting at the projected times based on this, I don't think. So now we're talking about, and I was told as well by an agent yesterday, this is before Milwaukee pulled out. He's like, we're not going to be able to have fans into the arenas next year. And that was already casting some doubt among some agents I was talking to into their minds about if next season was going to start at the projected sometime in December. And, you keep seeing January, February. I mean, it seems like everything right now is in flux. So, yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised by the stoppage, by Milwaukee pulling out. I'm surprised about the Lakers and the Clippers wanting to leave the bubble altogether. It just seems like everything, all the wheels are coming off at one time. And it might be time to just, take a step back and hit the reset button. But I know from the standpoint of the league, its ownerships, its television partners, that's a financial bath that they're going to be taking on it too. So it's tough. And there's some players, let's face it, most players in the league, though they make a lot of money, can't afford to just basically go without a paycheck right now and go for long periods without getting paid. Superstars, guys like LeBron and, who have business ventures and money on top of money that they've amassed, they can be without a paycheck for a while. I just wonder these other guys, these role players, these guys on minimum deals, these guys who are, just starting to make a little bit of money and they have all sorts of obligations and expenses. What is it going to do with them? And I think that's always what happens when we deal with players, whether it's lockouts or a situation like this. You have the top end players kind of driving the ship, but they can make certain decisions that impact them financially that won't hurt them as much as it will hurt the rest of the rank and file. And I always see that is always competing factions when you deal with this. So that's why I think you sometimes see and hear about some players like, because, they can't do it as easily as LeBron or some of these guys who have $100 million contracts. We think all of these guys are just rich and sleeping in silk pajamas and rolling in cash all the time. And I mean, maybe relative to us they are, but not everybody can do that.
Oh, and it's also worth noting that, when you get paid, half of your money goes to the government, and then you're going to pay your lawyer and your agent on top of that. So there really isn't, whatever they say, they report on their contract, it's never what they actually make. And so that's a great point. I kind of wonder, what do you think the goal is here for the players and in making this statement? Is there a specific goal in mind that they have?
I think the goal is they want to try to get these owners, which, and I've said this when this whole thing first kind of started. I've always said, you always hear about owners, are they going to give $10 million to this cause to help fight social justice? And it's like, okay, I know that sounds great, it's impressive, but it's about, if it was all about just throwing money at stuff, we throw money at things in this country that are broken all the time and that never get fixed. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's about tangible things, like some of these, big shot politicians. I always said, is your owner, look at your owner and see where his political donations go and see what kind of policies those political people they are giving financial donations to, are those policies in line with you? And I've asked players that, have you considered that? So if you want to be woke and want to try to force this issue, you need to put pressure on your ownership. And I wrote a piece about that a couple months ago. And I talked to players like Garrett Temple, who's on the Players Association, one of the more active, socially conscious, really intelligent guys. I talked to Anthony Tolliver, who's also one of those sorts of guys. David West, who's, even though he's out of the league, who's very active. So I talked to them about that stuff, it's about more than just getting your owner to donate money. And so that's what I think they're trying to get at, trying to get them to do things because they can use their influence and money to leverage change in terms of policing. I think education is huge, kind of overlooked. You know, education is largely tied to property taxes. Of course, education in rich neighborhoods and nice neighborhoods, the schools are going to be better because it's tied to the property tax base. And if you live in a poor neighborhood, your schools are going to suck because the tax base for property taxes isn't very strong. So you're always going to have a built-in inequality there. So I think they're looking at things like that because it's so much deeper than just making a statement, sending it out, we support our players, and writing a check to an organization. And I think they're trying to get beyond that cursory sort of stuff. And you really got to get into grassroots. That requires getting your hands dirty. It also requires pissing some people off. And, you know, owners don't really want to do that. They're in a lot of these political leaders who give them tax breaks to get properties and to get these arenas, and they leverage it into things for themselves. They are kind of partners more with that part of the community, not necessarily with the part of the community that the players want them to link up with. And I think that's what they're trying to break that hold.
For sure. Now, you know, Kenosha, Wisconsin is right near Milwaukee. And so it seems clear it was on their minds even more than any other team, and that's why they sort of spearheaded this whole thing. And I'm kind of curious, have you seen the video footage of what happened?
I watched part of it, and then I stopped watching it because it's the same old you know what. And I couldn't watch the rest of it. So I saw it, yes, and then I kind of didn't see the rest of it. But I saw enough of it. I kind of know the gist of what happened. It used to be a time where it would be easy for me to watch stuff like that, but I'm just kind of tired of watching it. I'm tired of watching it. I mean, I think maybe the George Floyd thing just made me, I can't do that anymore.
And what do you think the effect was on the players and them watching it? I mean, I was taken aback when we saw Doc Rivers have an impassioned speech before this shooter, this 17-year-old got apprehended. I think that was, you know what I mean? That whole thing happened separately. So what do you think the reaction is to a lot of these, you know, NBA players who are watching this stuff and are younger, right? They don't have as much age as we do. And so they're seeing these things. These are much more fresh in their mind.
Yeah. I think what a lot of players are going through, like, even with me, like, there's a lot of stuff that I have forgotten about. I wouldn't say I've put it out of my mind, but things that I've forgotten about or kind of put on the back burner. I never really talk about it with people because I just thought it was so common. You get used to so many of these things. And I think because we're in this era and this age of social media and we see this stuff now, and you realize not only how common it is, but it's something about it that's jolting and shocking when you see it. And then you start to have recollections of things that happened to you. You know, I think players are relating to personal experiences that happen to them. Obviously, with things that happen within their family and with their friends. I mean, the number of times I could keep you going on for hours about the number of times that I was chased for walking in a neighborhood that I was not supposed to be in because it was too wealthy. And my sister lived in the neighborhood and I was like 12 years old. I've been pulled over constantly, especially when I lived in Orlando, Florida, for absolutely no reason. And God, I mean, if I think about it, I probably should have been shot multiple times by police for interactions that I've had that turned volatile. And I think that's where some of it's coming from. People are thinking about that. They're relating to that. I'm like, man, that actually really could have been me. It sounds cliche. And I try not to, I never really, I was talking to a friend of mine about this. I don't talk about it publicly a lot because it's so overwhelming and there's so many stories. I don't want to feel like I'm saying, woe is me, look at me, I'm a victim. right? I kind of don't want to, because I don't feel that way. I don't want every police officer, white person to apologize to me because of some asshat did something that had nothing to do with them. I'm not looking for that, but I think I've had more thoughts about those kind of experiences, and I think other players are. And here's the funny thing: when I was having a conversation with I was just got off the phone with Nate McMillan talking about him. Obviously he was just recently fired by the Pacers, and after we were done talking, our conversation strayed right into that. Every time I have a conversation with a player or a coach, black player or coach, it always strays into that area, and it always gets into personal experiences like that. And so I think that's what people are feeling, because we're just all kind of it's just an odd time, and 2020 is, I can't wait for it to be over. But hopefully when it's over, we're on the other side of things. But right now it looks just kind of murky and kind of dark.
Right. I mean, there seems to be a component of legislation that they want to have somehow enacted. And I think what makes me worried about that is that kind of thing takes months and months and years before you can get anything done. And I wonder if the owners are worried about that too, only because it sounds like maybe the Bucks wanted the local legislature to pass some laws, right? Like I wonder if that really is a tangible goal that they might actually have out of this.
Exactly. And that's what I'm like. And so that's some of these things that they want to have done. And that's the reason why they've never pushed for it and it's never been done. Number one, I think a lot of the guys today are much more informed than what they were, say, 20 years ago. And when I say those guys, I mean NBA players, are a little bit more informed about what's going on. And I think social media does have a lot to do with that as well. But yeah, you're right. And I think this whole idea that if you want something done, it takes time. Man, it's like, how long does it take for a case to go to court and get a resolution? Like, it takes forever. Mm-hmm. And do you have the patience for that? Do you have the will to keep it up? And let's face it, some of these players who are on Milwaukee might right now, by the time you can get something done a year from now, they might not be on the team anymore. Like, it is something very difficult to do. And that's why I think that's the biggest challenge and the biggest chore. And, I know they want to dedicate their time in the off season, but and to these sorts of things, that's a lot of time to dedicate. And a lot of these guys want to go to Miami and Los Angeles to train and work out and live in their summer homes. Like, you're not going to necessarily be in those places, right? You usually leave them. And so you're going to take your foot off the gas pedal then. How can you get any of this accomplished? It's an interesting thing, but I think a lot of owners probably are just waiting out for this to dissipate so it eventually goes away. And I don't know if it's going to go away. And if it does go away, that means all of this effort right now is a complete waste. So if they're going to do this right now, you have to be pot committed for the long haul. Like, you got to be pot committed all the way in. You can't half-ass this, because if you half-ass it, you might as well just leave it alone and move on, because it's a waste of time. I've always been amazed when I listen to players. Remember when Donald Sterling went through all of that and they pushed him out? I was at USA Today at the time, and I remember talking to, I can't remember, it was Eric Bledsoe. I think it was his rookie year. I was at the Clippers locker room, and nothing had broken on Sterling, but I remember talking to people, and I just remember some players. I was like, do you actually feel okay playing for an owner we knew about some of the things he had done? And I was like, so if you care about these things, he already had a whole litany of stuff against him legally, racist stuff he had done. Does that not affect you playing for him? Like, I look at college players, and this is probably more true about football than basketball, but definitely, if you are an elite prospect and you're a football player, why would you go play for an idiot like the Clemson coach, Dabo Swinney, who is a MAGA supporter, who completely thinks you are property? If you are good enough to play for a program that good, you can play for somebody else who actually respects, appreciates you, and treats you as an equal. Why do you constantly empower people who don't give two craps about you? Too many players, I think, don't think about that. When they're going in free agency, you're thinking about, this guy's offering to pay me the most money. Why would you go play for the DeVos family in Orlando? Everything that they have ever done is against everything these players are fighting for and supporting. Why would you go play for them? So you got to settle those disputes within yourself and be more informed about those sorts of things, and then practice what you preach. And the same is true when it comes to professional sports teams. If you have an owner who was like a Donald Sterling, you got to think about more than the contract that he's going to give you. Would you be better off taking less money to go play for an owner like Herb Simon for the Pacers or for Mickey Arison with the Miami Heat than go and play for an owner who you know doesn't value you? That's, to me, is the real sacrifice. Are you willing to take potentially less to do that? And if you're not willing to do that, then you're all about talk. All you're doing is trying to get these headlines, get the pat on the backs, the attaboys, all the retweets on Twitter so people will tell you, oh, how great you are and how moving and how powerful, but you haven't accomplished or done anything other than really kind of lift up yourself. But you haven't done anything for anyone else. To me, that's where it really comes from. You have to be not only willing to hold those other people accountable that you say that you want to hold accountable, but at sometimes that means you have to sacrifice yourself. And that's why I believe, I'm not trying to be critical of LeBron James here. But what I will say is it's easier to jump on the bandwagon. And I'm only mentioning LeBron because he's the biggest name guy. It's easier to jump on the bandwagon with Kaepernick now with the kneeling years after the fact. When you were the lone wolf, when he was the lone wolf doing that, that took courage. It's easier to do it when everybody else jumps on board. And I would like to see more guys be that lone wolf who does that sort of thing, who takes that risk and doesn't wait for this groundswell. You need to think for yourself, and you need to put pressure on these people and not just bow to them and capitulate because they're giving you a scholarship to their school. There's other schools. Just because they're offering you a contract to their team, there are other teams. So you need to be about it and reach the finish line and don't half-ass it. Up until this point, we've had nothing but half-ass work being done, and nobody's been willing to get their hands dirty doing that sort of grassroots work.
Wow. I mean, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing those thoughts. Very powerful stuff. And, change happens, but it's really slow. And I can only hope that this will accelerate something, going forward.
Yeah, it's painful. It's slow. And you know what? Sometimes when you're going forward, you get knocked back a few steps, but you have to keep going. And I think what's happened repeatedly in recent years is guys get knocked back a few steps. You see, hey, think about this. What if, when the NBA said there's no kneeling during the national anthem and the players signed off on that, what if LeBron James would have said a couple of years ago when the NBA instituted that policy, okay, I'm going to kneel. I dare you to suspend me. What would have happened to the policy? Are they going to suspend their star player? Absolutely not. So that's what I mean by being the lone wolf and pressing and pushing authority on these issues when you know you're in the right. And I would have liked to have seen guys do stuff like that rather than waiting till we're in a crisis situation where we're in now because we're in such a big hole to try to dig out of.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that. Please, Jay, stay safe where you are, and both COVID and anything else that might pop up in this country we live in. And again, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right, Nick. Thank you.
Well, hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and I'm really pleased to have on the show Ronnie Nunn, who I'm sure you all well know, was an NBA referee for 19 years and also was head of officials for 5 and director of development for 3 more. But really, Ronnie, what I wanted to bring you on the show today for was talk a little bit about what's happening in the NBA yesterday with the boycotting of games, what the statement they were trying to make. And having been around the world of basketball and the NBA for so long, I thought it'd be great to get even some historical context from you about your thoughts about what is going on. So what did you think yesterday when you first heard about the Milwaukee Bucks wanting to not play the game?
Well, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but I do have my NBA shirt on. And of course, I'm attached to the NBA always. They've given me an exposure to be involved with the NBA, even as an official. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that players have realized that the social implications that are around a basketball court enter the court. And it was great that the league decided via the players' persistence and recognition that I don't think anyone could feel comfortable with what's been occurring, and especially with the NBA having a strong African American population of players, that they took a social issue and made it a financial concern. It seems that when finance is the denominator, people move, people do things, sometimes in the wrong way, and sometimes for the right reasons. And that makes an impact when they say, we're not going to play because we're not satisfied with what's going on. And of course, I think they're asking of themselves and maybe the ownerships to really do something that's active and more than just words about correcting and redirecting this entire matter.
So do you feel like the chain is the players will boycott, that puts pressure on the owners, and then the owners in turn might put pressure on the politicians? Is that sort of what the thought process could be?
I like that because apparently there's this connection between politics and corporations. And in some cases, it's very good. And in some cases, for example, in my view, it hurts people that are not at that level, right, in terms of their financial well-being and amongst many other things. So I think that is a big reason why they are attempting to attend to this in this manner. And I think corporations will realize that Colin Kaepernick, who took a very reverent knee to something that was going on, all of a sudden has blossomed into something where, people have realized at the NBA, and it's great to have a great leader like LeBron James to pour more activity into his words of how he feels with his school and with his leadership of players. And it just makes him a great teammate for the league.
Mm-hmm. Well, what sparked all this was the shooting in Kenosha, in Wisconsin, that we saw. I'm just kind of curious. Did you see the video?
Yes, I did.
And did you have what was your reaction to watching what happened with the police?
I mean, it was the same type of mentality that occurred for George Floyd without using a firearm, and now we have a firearm, and in both cases. Almost in both cases, a life was lost. Certainly in one, I certainly think that if Jacob can make it through this, he's going to have a very diminished life compared to what he could have done if he was just held and, there was some kind of hold onto him instead of going to get him with guns drawn. I mean, it's so definite. When you're dealing with bullets, it's a definite situation. The injury is going to be there, and death is often the result. So, it's a startling thing. We're living in such crazy times through this administration. I think that has given more fumes to something that, by the way, has always been around. I mean, let's make sure we understand the truth about America and its history. So, I think right now it's really at a bubble top. And I think I'm hoping that people that never realized this are beginning to realize this and the unfairness of it. There shouldn't be a fear that blacks are going to take over America. Blacks are going to be people that are and continue to be, if they haven't been already, which they have been, inclusive in America's dreams. And you see that with people that are successful. Take the NBA players. Their lives are altered for the better. Because of the United States of America and the NBA as a corporation. So I just think that this is something that has got to be addressed, and then it trickles down to whether it deals with health or education or housing and the many other issues that are at hand right now.
I'm curious if, someone who's been around as long as you have, if other historical things that have happened and occurred in the past that kind of came up and sort of, bubble up in your mind and made you kind of relive certain things that you might have had in your past, dealing with this kind of stuff that we've been dealing with and struggling with for so long.
Well, of course, as a college athletic scholarship player, I remember getting letters from the ACC and the SEC as a New York high school basketballer. And my dad, who's African American, said, you might as well not even look at these letters because the South and the schools that are in those conferences, the South and the mentality hasn't changed. He used to say, I'm worried about you going to South Jersey. Forget about Delaware's and the Marylands, which had the northern chapter of the Ku Klux Klan that was around when I was going to school.
What year was that?
1968 to 72, when I went to GW. When I went at 68, of course, that was also a time with King's death. And so these things were very vibrant. This is almost a second coming to a very difficult 60s, which I lived through. I can remember how I understood and felt proud of John Carlos and Tommy Smith, who had a black fist raised while they stood on the podiums for their, I think, gold and silver medals in the Olympics. And it reminded me that was the theme of Black Power. There was a need of power within the Black community, and they were asking to have that power, have the opportunity to have power in all the items that people would want to have, whether it's good education and housing and things that I just mentioned. So that was a stark fist showing the demand of something. And when I think of Colin Kaepernick, it was a reverent knee and asking for the same thing. And yet he did it with such, which I believe is reverence. There is a reverence to a kneeling, So in any case, that was a time that I became very alert to the things of the United States. Beside my dad, because I'm of mixed heritage, Italian by my mother, my dad was very, very instrumental in keeping me on target concerning the fact that things for Black folks are continuing to be a problem. And though it seemed like things were getting better at the 60s at the sake of losing King and losing the two Kennedys and losing Malcolm X, who were all trying to vie for the same struggle to get equality at a better place. You can't get it all together, but you can get it at a better place. And listen, President Johnson carried through all those voting items and things that needed to be done. So there was a great transference of ideals and then to back it up.
You know what I find interesting is that Colin Kaepernick now, 5 years later, there is more reverence and more agreement with what he was doing. I think we're now finally starting to see what he was talking about. And it wasn't anything about an affront to the national anthem or to the flag or to the troops. It was simply to protest what we are seeing every day, every week, every month. And I think it's useful to remember that, if you were to look at Martin Luther King's approval ratings in the 60s before he was killed, they were not good. He was not the popular figure that we have now, in the same way that Colin Kaepernick was not popular in the very beginning when he started this. So I find it fascinating how over time things can can change that way in progress. I suppose, do you see a direct through line between the Black Power movement in the 60s and the Black Lives Matter now?
Absolutely. I see a transition and a connection. By the way, there's always been under the radar that connection, that thread. That thread has been forever in the United States' history, that there's an undercurrent for African American folk and other people of color, that there's always this kind of emphasis on trying to get through the so-called glass ceiling issue or something of that nature. But there was always this undercurrent that we have not had equal justice, and everybody knows it. And I think the patience, the great patience that comes from a Judeo-Christian society that also affected African-American religiosity, what patience they had and continue to have to try to get to a place that's equal and livable and appropriate. So I think about those things as well. And even in Jacob's mom, Blake's mom, she had that sense of patience, wishing enough is enough. But it seems that other things have to happen for people to really wake up. Money seems to drive things that will wake people up, unfortunately.
So do you have faith in the fact that what the NBA players did? I mean, I guess we're going to go back to playing tomorrow or soon. That it was enough for a couple of days of stoppage to bring enough of the attention and to put enough pressure on people to maybe affect some change. Do you feel hopeful that could happen?
Yes, if we link what Kaepernick was doing in the NFL, and we put it together with now what the NBA did collectively as players, I think there's hope and a recognition that there's going to be a cork put in the drain when something is getting out of hand, and change has to come out of that. That cork's got to come out with change going in. So I also want to congratulate, and I expect it because we've done things before like this, but the NBA referees have marched down in the bubble and have been part of this Black Lives Matter. And Black lives matter as well as anybody else's, but the bottom line is it's the black lives that matter that people have not recognized that matter. And that's why it was great to see them. And though I'm not with them and, I'm retired from the NBA, my heart is with them. And I think at the leadership time, there could not be a better guy than Adam Silver. He is very sociology conscious of things in the world today. He has that kind of affinity for that. David had a different strength during the time to make this league profound, and Adam has now carried out that, continued with that, but also he's a wide-ranging person concerning social matters, and I think it's wonderful and it's fair, and I'm glad that there are African Americans in place that can impact the league and impact the nation in an area of sport where they're taking a stand, and they mean it, and I'm very proud of them as well.
So it sounds like the reasonable take would be that we've had progress since the 60s till now, right? Yes. Would you say that's safe to say?
I say we've had progress.
Okay.
We've had progress because, I was the second black to play basketball at GW, which, is a very progressive school. My buddy in high school, who was an All-American high school player, Charlie Davis, went to Wake Forest. He was the second black to go there. My era was a time when people were going to schools in the South for the first time. The great Charlie Scott, another New Yorker who went to University of North Carolina and had a great NBA career, was the first, and very bright guy the first to go to University of North Carolina. So I grew up in the era where there were firsts involved, and I see the growth. But again, there is an underlining issue that the country continues to have at the bottom of the dregs of the barrel of our lives that stays, and it's sticky and it's stuck. And in this administration, this has risen up towards the surface, and people are seeing it. Thank goodness for the technology, because we're able to see these unbelievable decisions by people that are supposed to protect and serve. And I'm not knocking the job. I think the job is a difficult job. You're a target when you're an officer, and I'm sure every night someone comes home to their family, and I'm sure the family says it's a mother or a wife or a significant other that says, I'm so glad you made it through the day in your home, because it's a war when you're doing that kind of work. But there is also a matter in which of comportment. There's a comportment issue with policing. And that's where their issue is. And by the way, that kind of policing was the kind of methodology and ways I think our older and past NBA officials dealt with players, where you had to work with them instead of just give them text and it's my way or the highway. There's no such thing anymore. You have to work with people on everything. There is a line that's drawn, and if you step over it, you're out of bounds. But that policing type of mentality was something that I saw when I was hired in '84. It's begun to diminish, and the training's gotten better. But I still think players and referees the more need to understand the client group that they're working for.
Sure.
And that's a big key.
You mentioned leadership, and I feel like people might not understand how profound the presidential leadership can be on a country. I think a lot of people who pride themselves on not being sheep and who don't follow end up following the administration like sheep without even realizing it. But so the bigger concern obviously is, with Jacob's family, my heart, it's like, so it just kills me to have to see what they have to go through, and the kids in the car. But another level of this, though, is it ends up engendering these cross arguments about who was right and who wasn't. I dipped my toe on Twitter on my political side about whether if 7 shots were really justified for what happened there. And to hear the response from the other side is maybe even more profoundly problematic with what's wrong with the country. That's what makes me so worried about how we'd ever come to, if we're on that far, if we can't even get to the point where we're saying, you know what, that's way excessive and no one should die for a domestic, dispute. I don't know how we ever come together.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I'm glad you're speaking about it on the podcast. There is an ingrained, I should call it GNSS B, generic white behavior that is ingrained in our society because they have never had to worry about their errors, really, or their issues. They've been in positions of power. They've been in positions to negotiate what they want to do. But the problem with America is when they see black or brown, they see it as a threat unless they have an association with people that live next door to them, which is still an issue.
Right.
Unless they're on a job and they see somebody, whether it's a blue-collar job or a white-collar job. If they're amongst the people, you begin to learn about them. I mean, when I think about the third world countries that are people from those countries that are living in the United States now, I didn't grow up with, a Pakistani store on the corner that sold papers. I didn't know a Pakistani person. And it's great to see the addition of all these beyond the normal or the Eurocentric people that have come here. So I think it's you need to know people to understand that we're really very much the same, with the exception of maybe foods and spices and dress and religiosities. But basically, this country is supposed to be able to attend to that and press out the wrinkles of that. And frankly, we haven't done it in the 3.5 years, has created a real problem. And by the way, this is a result of the parenting of the administration of the United States. This is the result of the children that are having these issues. It's just like parenting. If you don't straighten it out early, your children can embarrass you, right. And we're embarrassed as a nation.
And we've seen the results, sadly, with in the protests last night or the night before with this young boy with an assault rifle shooting up the streets. So. I hope we could find some level footing, and I hope something in November changes as well that will help us come together. And at the very least, to be frank, at the very least, make some of the people who have these really awful views about race go back into the hiding where they used to have to be, versus being out in the open where they seem to be emboldened now. And hopefully that could at least change. But Ronnie, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your views and your insights. It's really important that we can get somewhere with this.
Well, with the other half of my background, I'm always realizing how great my mom was, because she did not sit in silence, and because silence yields to complicity, and she made a stand in her time in her life of a man she loved and made a life, and for the most part, my brother, the offsprings of that relationship. God bless, has been well for us, although we've always recognized that we were different because of this issue. So I hope and pray that we are doing well, but it takes doing to get it done. And COVID is also another thing that has exposed all of this. Mm-hmm. And sometimes some things happen for the right reasons. And although the deaths of people shouldn't be, but it seems that when they're really at a place where no one can understand what to do next because a disease is hitting us, we're seeing this other pandemic that's part of that disease. I'm sure during the Depression, blacks suffered a lot more than the bread lines you see of whites picking up their bread and water. So I hope for the best.
Well said. And again, thank you for coming on and sharing, and stay safe out there, would you?
Yeah, and likewise too, because health is wealth.